I'm pregnant with John's child, so you, Karen, should divorce John, because it's just too pitiful for a child to grow up without a father, don't you think? With tear-filled eyes, Lisa gently stroked her still flat stomach. Behind her, Lisa's parents were glaring at me. John's childhood friend and ex-girlfriend Lisa had shocked me several times before, but this time, I was truly and deeply disappointed. After all, my husband John is already... My name is Karen. I had a happy marriage with John. The reason why it's in the past tense is because John has left this world. John went out one morning with a smile saying, "I'm off," and came back cold. He had passed away suddenly from an illness. John and I had just started our calm married life. Until recently, John and I had been troubled by my mother-in-law and Lisa, John's ex-girlfriend. Since John's death, I've had almost no contact with my mother-in-law, but she was a selfish woman. She wanted to control John's life as she wished. The young John was a good listener to his mother, and Lisa was almost like a fiancé chosen by their parents. They were told by their respective parents that they were a couple, so until they were in middle school, they really thought they were lovers. But when he became a teenager and reached puberty, John realized that it was ridiculous to have a fiancé in this day and age. Lisa seemed to like John, but John had someone else he liked, so he talked to Lisa properly and persuaded her that this relationship was strange. He had successfully parted with Lisa. But Lisa hadn't given up on John. John was good-looking and intelligent. He was really bad at sports, but that gap was one of the elements that made him popular. In other words, John was a ladies' man. So naturally, after breaking up with Lisa, he had other girlfriends. When Lisa heard that John had a girlfriend, she would show up in front of John and his girlfriend on their dates and start babbling about her memories with John. No girlfriend of John's would feel good about hearing stories like how their first kiss was when they were in kindergarten, or how they had always believed they were engaged because their parents had said so. Even when John had a girlfriend, Lisa would interfere and he ended up being dumped. Or so I've heard. Of course, I, who started dating him after he became a working adult, also received the same treatment from Lisa. Surely, it was unpleasant, but I didn't particularly want to break up with John. John was truly cherishing me, and I wanted to cherish him as well. Our relationship was about our feelings for each other, and I thought Lisa had nothing to do with it. When John said, "I'm sorry," looking remorseful, I said, "Don't worry about it. Let's have some ice cream. I'm hungry." And he said he was truly relieved. He said that was when he wanted to marry me. John and I decided to get married, but this time, Lisa and my mother-in-law formed a tag team and stood in our way. Lisa's family is quite wealthy, and it seems that my mother-in-law wanted John to marry Lisa and benefit from it herself. Since Lisa seemed to want to marry John, their interests were aligned. I was harassed many times. When I went to my in-laws' house to greet them, I was surprised when my mother-in-law invited Lisa to the house for a tea party, even though it was a day we had told them about in advance. My father-in-law was trying to calm my mother-in-law down, saying, "That's enough," but in front of my strong-willed mother-in-law, he barely had a say. Whenever she retorted, "You're so annoying. Lisa's just like a daughter to us, it's fine," my father-in-law would just shrink back and fall silent. Lisa knew all of John's past girlfriends, so I was the one she enjoyed laughing at the most, positioned as the worst-looking one. John didn't choose his wife for her looks but for her personality, but I can't believe Karen is such a wonderful person, Lisa said snidely, causing an uproar with my mother-in-law. John was furious with my mother-in-law and Lisa. "Don't ever get involved with Karen again," he yelled, taking me away from his family's house. He apologized to me repeatedly and truly did not invite his mother-in-law to our wedding. Of course, John didn't invite Lisa to the wedding either, which obviously didn't sit well with my mother-in-law and Lisa. In revenge, my mother-in-law and Lisa waited for a moment when John wasn't home and visited our new home. I was told by John that I didn't need to interact with them, so the moment I saw them on the security camera, I asked them to leave, but they didn't give up. Since they kept repeatedly ringing the doorbell and causing a commotion outside, I reluctantly opened the door because I didn't want strange rumors to spread around the neighborhood. My mother-in-law and Lisa, who barged into the house, looked around and started complaining about the interior. The indirect lighting that John had chosen with care was just tacky to Lisa. When I said John chose that, Lisa instantly flipped her stance and said, "That's so John, I thought it was a nice design," making me feel her bitchiness. I served them snacks and tea because they arrived uninvited and started saying they were hungry, but I was incessantly nagged by my mother-in-law for not serving homemade stuff, and Lisa complained the tea was bitter. After they had their fill of complaining, my mother-in-law and Lisa left before John came home. Exhausted, I fell asleep on the sofa, and when I woke up, John had gently covered me with a blanket. I reported everything that had happened that day to John. John, furious, called his family's house and Lisa to complain, but his family showed no remorse, and Lisa was thrilled to get a call from John after so long. I realized that whatever we said to these people were meaningless. After discussing it with John, we decided not to open the door if my mother-in-law and Lisa came again, and to call the police if they caused a commotion outside. If they still didn't leave, we decided to consult the police. After that, it was really tough when my mother-in-law and Lisa actually came and we had to call the police. But perhaps because they were scolded by the police, my mother-in-law and Lisa finally calmed down and never came to our house again. It was tough, but we should be able to lead a peaceful life from now on. Believing so, John suddenly passed away. At the funeral, I was in a daze all the time, clinging to the coffin and crying. My mother-in-law told me it was because I had stressed John out that he had passed away so early. If my parents hadn't defended me, I might have followed John. I thought Lisa would come to the funeral, but she didn't. Even now, I shudder to think what would have happened if they had accused me together. 3 years had passed since John's death, and I was still living in the house we had shared. It was brief, but I simply couldn't bring myself to leave the house filled with memories of my time with John. One day, as I was enjoying the peace and quiet time, the doorbell rang. When I checked, the monitor showed Lisa and a couple who resembled her, likely her parents. Behind Lisa's smiling face, her parents wore stern expressions. Though curious, I decided to invite them in. Since the anniversary of John's death was approaching, I opened the door without any suspicion, which was a mistake. Long time no see, Karen. You see, I'm pregnant with John's child, so you have to divorce John, okay? It's not fair for a child to grow up without a father, right? Lisa explained, her big eyes welling up with tears as she caressed her flat belly. I'd been flabbergasted by Lisa before, but this time I was genuinely dumbfounded. After all, my husband John had already passed away. As I was trying to make sense of her words, her parents stepped forward and began to raise their voices. Even though John was married, he made a move on our Lisa and got her pregnant. We want him to take responsibility. You aren't going to say that Lisa should raise the child alone, are you? That's completely absurd. As the trio made a scene at the entrance, I felt a chill run down my spine. Even after John's death, Lisa continued to torment him. John was always kind and gentle, but Lisa caused him so much trouble. I'd seen John stressed out over Lisa numerous times. I couldn't forgive her. With that thought, I invited Lisa and her parents inside, saying, "It's no good to keep standing there." I led them into the family room, where our family's portraits were displayed. Lisa's parents, who entered the room before her, let out a surprised, "What?" when they saw the portraits. Lisa peeked into the room, her eyes wide and her voice catching in her throat. Of course she'd be surprised to see John's portrait displayed. While they were still in shock, I unfolded a portable table in the living room, prepared enough tea for everyone, and sat down in front of the three of them. "So, Lisa, you're pregnant with John's child, huh? John passed away 3 years ago. I'd love to know how you managed to get pregnant with my late husband's child. Are you okay? You look a bit pale." I asked, pretending to be oblivious to the three who had turned pale. Lisa, her eyes filled with tears, uttered in a trembling voice, "That can't be true." But her parents didn't let her wallow in her sorrow. "We are deeply sorry." All of a sudden, Lisa's father prostrated himself, followed by her mother. Her father tugged at Lisa's arm, forcing her to prostrate herself as well. I'm sorry. We didn't think that John had passed away." As Lisa burst into tears, her father grabbed her by her collar and shouted, "Who's the father of the child you're carrying?" Lisa then started to reveal her misconduct. The reason Lisa stopped visiting our house abruptly was not that she had given up on John, but because she had been transferred for work. The parents of Lisa and John no longer communicated, and it seemed this family truly did not know that John had passed away. As for the child in Lisa's belly, in short, it's unclear who the father is. It could be her married boss or one of the several men she met at bars. Lisa has led such a chaotic life that it was impossible to identify who the father was. Even though she was in love with John, it seemed that Lisa was trying to tear us apart by claiming the child she was carrying was John's. Despite having no relationship with John, she believed that kind-hearted John would not abandon her, now soon to be a single mother. On Lisa's confession, her mother burst into tears and her father exclaimed, "How shameful!" While I calmly asked Lisa, "How many months pregnant are you?" 3 months. The baby is already kicking." "You usually start to feel the baby move around 4 months at the earliest. You seem to be feeling the baby move quite early. Are you sure that there's really a baby in there? Considering Lisa's past actions, it was questionable whether there really was a baby in her belly. As I pierced Lisa with a cold stare, she trembled and answered, "To tell the truth, there's no baby. I love John, I really do. That's why As Lisa started to babble incoherently, her mother began to smack her on the back. Lisa's father, once again in tears, bowed deeply to me and said, "We will come another day to apologize," and left the house. To the departing three I stated, "No need for further apologies. Please don't come here again." After seeing off Lisa and her parents, who hastily retreated, I lit a candle at the home altar. I said a prayer and spoke to John. "John, thanks for lending me your strength. I'm not one to voice my opinion or get into arguments. I don't think I would have known what to do in such a heated situation. Yet, surprisingly, I was able to respond calmly to Lisa and her parents, just like John did when he was alive. John was good at calmly assessing a situation when a dispute arose and solving the problem. When Lisa and her parents bowed their heads to me, I felt a sense of clarity and I was able to respond appropriately. It felt as though John was lending me his strength. That day, I cried for John for the first time in a long time. The house without John was unbearably lonely. A few days later, despite my telling them not to come again, Lisa's parents came to visit. I didn't want them in the house filled with memories of John, so I told them to meet me at the nearby local restaurant. After preparing to go out and paying my respects at the home altar, I headed to the restaurant. There, Lisa's parents were waiting for me, looking pale.
"We deeply apologize for our rudeness the other day. We're truly ashamed of our daughter,"
began Lisa's father. Apparently, upon hearing of John's death, Lisa burst into tears. After crying for a while, Lisa was possessed by a delusion that I might have been the cause of John's death and tried to confront me at my house, but her parents held her back and took her to a hospital instead. Lisa was diagnosed with a severe mental illness, a condition where she doesn't hesitate to hurt others if it means realizing her desires. To correct her distorted cognition, it seems she will be undergoing counseling from now on. Lisa, who quit her job because she misunderstood that she would marry John, will probably have to live a tough life facing herself while receiving counseling. Her parents are expected to bear the cost of treatment. Although they come from a wealthy family, Lisa's parents seemed quite old. They expressed their difficulty in leaving behind a daughter like her.
"This is our apology for the other day."
With those words, Lisa's parents handed me an envelope filled with cash. I didn't even bother to check the amount. I didn't need the money. I rejected the cash envelope right away. "I don't need this kind of money. All I want is to never have to deal with you or Lisa again. Why don't you use this money to move somewhere far away so you won't have to cross paths with me?" I said with a hint of sarcasm. Lisa's parents replied solemnly, "We would." After that, it appears they really did move. They sent a letter with the news of their move, along with some more money, which I also rejected outright. Looking at the address of their new home, it seems they moved quite a distance away. Now, Lisa will probably never be a part of my life again. "You know, our married life has been filled with so many disturbances," I said to the photograph of my late husband, John, besides his favorite cake on the altar. But still, I cherished every moment after, and my life with John was a happy one. "Thank you," I said, on what happened to be the anniversary of John's death. From now on, I plan to live my life alone without John. I will experience many joys that John didn't get to, and when I eventually join him in heaven, I will have plenty to brag about.